My name is Ferelith Daws. I am 69 years old, and I have always believed that if you stay quiet, keep your receipts, and mind your manners, life will more or less stay in order. I kept my house that way for years. Tidy drawers, alphabetized bills, no drama. That illusion ended the afternoon I drove back from the church retreat in Brunswick, still humming the hymn we closed with, and turned onto my own street in Savannah. At first I thought the wind had blown someone's trash into the yard. Cardboard boxes, torn fabric, a burst of papers glittering in the sunlight like confetti. Then I saw the quilt my mother had stitched before her hands began to tremble. The blue thread was unmistakable. The air went still inside my chest. I pulled the car to the curb and got out slowly, the way people move at funerals. Beside the garbage bins, a mountain of my life leaned at an angle. Clothes books, the lamp from my bedside, a stack of files still labeled property tax receipts. The box marked Alden's tools had split open. Wrenches and sockets lay scattered in the dirt like silver bones. On the porch stood my daughter-in-law, Savina. Barefoot, phone in hand, eyes cold. "We don't need you anymore," she said loud enough for the street to hear. "Leave." The word landed heavier than I expected. Leave. As if I were an intruder. Not the woman who paid the mortgage, who cooked Sunday dinners, who folded their laundry when they were too busy for their own lives. Behind her, my son Kier stood still, one hand on the railing. He didn't look at me. The same boy who once ran into my arms with scraped knees now studied the floorboards. I waited for him to speak, to say it was a mistake that they were spring cleaning and went too far. He didn't. Savina turned away, first the door slamming behind her, with a sound that startled a flock of crows from the neighbor's oak. For a moment, all I could hear was the rustle of paper. My driver's license renewal notice fluttered against the curb. I bent to pick it up. The ground smelled of damp cardboard, and something burnt a faint sweetness from a candle they must have thrown out with my things. My hands didn't shake. I expected them to. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. The number came to me without thought, the one person who had always told me to keep copies of everything. When Odelia answered, her voice was the same as it had been for 40 years, steady, practical, unshockable. I told her quietly what had happened. She didn't gasp. She only said, "Take photos first." I turned back toward the pile. On top half, buried under a ripped trash bag, lay my wedding photo. The glass had cracked clean across Alden's smile. I brushed away the dust, lifted it from the heap, and took the first picture. Then another. By the time I put the phone down, the sun had shifted, casting a thin line of light across my name on one of the boxes. The lock on the front door gleamed in the distance, untouched, already belonging to someone else. The front door was only 10 steps from the curb, but those 10 steps felt like a climb. I still had the key in my hand, the same brass key I'd carried since the day we moved in. The edges were worn smooth from years of use. I pushed it into the lock, twisted, and heard nothing. No give, no click. Just the sound of metal grinding against a stranger's door. I tried again, slower this time, as if patience might persuade the mechanism to remember me. The key stuck halfway. I pressed my palm against the doorframe, leaning in. It didn't move. I could smell fresh oil on the lock, faint and sharp, the scent of something replaced that morning. Behind the curtains next door, a shadow moved. Mrs. Dunby, with her tiny dog and endless gossip, stood frozen at her window. I lifted a hand slightly, not to wave, just to show her I'd seen her. The curtain dropped at once. Another house across the street flicked its porch light off in daylight. I had become contagious. The porch boards creaked under my weight. My knees still ached from the drive back, but the ache wasn't what burned. I rattled the knob one last time uselessly before letting my hand fall. The garbage men wouldn't come until morning. I crouched near the pile, pulling at the nearest box. The cardboard had soaked through from last night's rain. Inside were tax receipts, some dating back 15 years, all with my handwriting. Ferelith Daws, neat, cursive, small loops. I wiped the moisture from one page. My name had bled into a blue haze, but it was still legible. A fly landed on the rim of the box. I swatted it away. The smell rising from the heap was thick, wet paper detergent, a trace of something spoiled. My blouse clung to my back. I stacked a few papers on the hood of my car, trying to separate what could be saved. My hand brushed against a letter from the city tax office, stamped with the word owner. I folded it carefully and slipped it into my purse. The smallest proof could become armor later. My phone vibrated against my palm. For a moment, I thought maybe Keir had remembered. I answered before even checking the screen, but it was only a message reminder from the pharmacy blood pressure refill ready for pickup. I almost laughed. My son hadn't called in 2 days, but at least the pills were punctual. Still, I dialed him. Once. Twice. The third time, it went straight to voicemail. His recorded voice, steady, polite, detached, filled the line. "You've reached Keir. Leave a message." "Keir," I said softly. "I'm at the house. The key doesn't work. Your things are fine. Mine, most of them are out here. Call me." I hesitated. "Please." I ended the call before the tone finished and stared at the screen. Nothing. Across the street, a car door slammed. Someone's child laughed ordinary life moving on, while mine sat in puddles. I bent again, pulling another half-broken box upright. A soaked photo album slid out, pages glued together by water. I pressed my thumb to one page until a single picture peeled free Keir at 12, holding his first fish grin too wide for his face. The image blurred where the ink had run, but I could still see his eyes. I wiped the corner clean with my sleeve. The paper tore under the pressure. I folded what was left, tucked it beside the letter in my purse, and straightened up. The sun was climbing higher, spreading heat through the quiet street. From inside the house, I heard movement, footsteps, then a faint click, maybe Savina closing a window. I stepped back toward my car, papers pressed against my chest like a shield. The brass key glinted in my hand, scratched and useless. It had opened every door of my life until today. Now it was only a piece of metal, just like my name on the damp paper, still visible, but no longer welcome. I carried the wet box across the street, its bottom sagging in my arms. The papers inside dripped onto the asphalt, leaving a trail like breadcrumbs. Mr. Vincent Lowe's house stood 2 doors down, white shutters, green trim, the smell of fertilizer always hanging near his porch. He had borrowed my hedge clippers last fall and never returned them. When I knocked, I heard the television cut off, then the slow shuffle of his slippers. The door cracked open a few inches. His face appeared in the shadow, clean-shaven as always, but pale. "Afternoon, Vincent," I said. My voice came out steady. "You've got a minute." He hesitated, then widened the door just enough to show his shirt buttons and the rim of a coffee mug. "Ferelith," he said, dragging out my name as if testing whether it was safe to use. "I was just sitting down to lunch." "I can see that." I gestured to the mug. "I just wanted to ask if you saw anything this morning. Someone's thrown out all my belongings." His eyes flicked past me to the pile by the curb. Even from here, the flash of silver from Alden's toolbox was visible. That's awful," he said. "I'm sorry to hear that. Did you see who did it?" He took a sip of coffee that wasn't there, the mug empty. "No, can't say I did. I keep the curtains drawn most mornings. I know. I saw them move when I came home. That made him shift his weight. Well, you know how light plays tricks. Hard to tell what's going on. I suppose it's hard to miss someone hauling furniture into the street." His mouth twitched. "Maybe the garbage pickup ran early, Vincent." I said his name quietly, and his eyes dropped to the doormat. "You've lived next to me for 14 years. You saw." He didn't answer. Behind him, his wife's voice floated from the kitchen. "Who's that, honey? Nobody," he called over his shoulder. Then to me, lower, "Look, Ferelith. I didn't want to get involved. It looked like family business. It was." He swallowed. "Well then, He tried to close the door. I pressed my palm lightly against the frame. Did they say anything? He hesitated again, guilt sharpening his expression. Only that you'd moved out for good. Said you left everything behind and didn't want reminders. They seemed real sure of it. And you believed them. He sighed. I figured you'd call if you needed anything. I am calling. My voice cracked once, then steadied. I need a little honesty, that's all. He looked down at my wet shoes. I'm sorry, Ferelith. I didn't see anything. The door shut with a soft click. I stood on his porch a moment longer, listening to the lock slide into place. Then I turned back toward the street. The afternoon sun had grown harsher, throwing long shadows across the driveway. The air hummed with cicadas, but the houses stayed silent, their blinds drawn like closed eyes. By the time I reached my car, my arms ached from holding the box. I set it beside the others and opened the trunk. Inside, the heat had turned the air heavy, smelling faintly of motor oil and cardboard. Among the scattered items, I found Alden's watch. It had stopped years ago at 11:23, the same day he died, and I never had it repaired. The glass face was cracked now, the leather band stiff with age. But when I held it in my palm, it felt solid, something that still belonged to me. I unfolded a metal chair from the trunk and placed it on the edge of the sidewalk. The legs sank slightly into the dirt. I sat down beside the pile, the watch, resting warm against my skin. Across the street, Vincent's curtain shifted once more, a brief flicker of movement, then nothing. I stayed seated until the sun began to drop behind the roofs, waiting for a voice that didn't come. By dusk, the air had cooled enough to move without sweating. I dragged the boxes closer to the car's open trunk and began sorting by instinct. Keep maybe gone. Wet photographs went into maybe. Clothes too heavy with mildew went into gone. Anything Alden's hands had touched went into keep. The wrench set was first still faintly smelling of oil and cedar from the old garage. I wiped the metal dry with a rag, stacking each tool in the shallow box he had built himself, the one lined with felt. His initials A.D. were carved inside the lid. He'd always said tools were a man's handwriting. You could tell his story by the way he cared for them. I wasn't sure what mine said now, sitting cross-legged in the street, rebuilding a life from garbage. At the bottom of another box, I found the envelope that had once held our wedding rings. Alden's band was still there, scratched and dull. Mine was gone. I could almost hear him teasing. That's why I told you to keep everything in writing. Ferelith. Paper outlives gold. The memory came back clear. Our kitchen table 20 years ago, him bent over a stack of folders showing me how to track every purchase, every deed, every payment. You keep a copy for the house, a copy for the lawyer, and a copy for the fireproof box, he'd said. One day, someone's going to pretend they forgot what belongs to you. Don't let them forget. Back then, I'd laughed and told him no one could be that cruel. I found the fireproof box near the bottom of the pile, dented but unbroken. The key still hung on the same chain around my neck. I opened it right there on the pavement. Inside neatly sealed folders, a decade of our shared life preserved in labeled envelopes. Car title, Alden's pension, insurance, and one thick folder marked in his handwriting, mortgage and ownership primary owner, Ferelith Daws. The edges were crisp, untouched by moisture. I ran my finger over the raised letters of my name, feeling something inside me shift from grief to focus. The folder held the entire history of the house application forms, payment records, tax statements. On the final page, a printed line in bold title in the name of Ferelith Daws. Below that, Alden's signature, steady and sure. I blinked hard, reading it again to be certain. The house wasn't Keir's. It never had been. I had co-signed their refinancing years ago, but Alden must have filed the final amendment before he died. Keir and Savina had been living under my roof, paying nothing, assuming my patience meant surrender. I sat back on the asphalt folder balanced on my knees. The streetlight flickered on above me, casting pale light over the papers. The noise of evening, the hum of air conditioners, a dog barking somewhere, felt distant. I thought of Savina's voice earlier. "We don't need you anymore." Leave. She hadn't just wanted me gone. She had wanted the house free and clear. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. Odelia again, her name lighting up like a steady pulse. I didn't answer. Not yet. I needed a minute to breathe, to measure what I held in my hands. Each document was a nail in the truth. Every mortgage payment, every repair receipt, every year's tax check, written by me. Keir and Savina might have changed the locks, but they hadn't changed the law. I pressed my palm flat on the folder, steadying it against the wind. Alden had always said paper was armor, and for the first time since coming home, I believed him. The sky deepened to indigo, the street empty except for me and the pile that no longer felt like trash. It felt like evidence. Could the paper they ignored become the weapon they never saw coming? I sat in the driver's seat long after the streetlights flickered on. The mortgage folder rested beside me, heavy as a confession. My fingers hovered over the phone for what felt like an hour before I finally pressed call. Odelia answered on the second ring. "Ferelith Daws," she said, her voice as brisk and familiar as a gust off the docks. "I was wondering when you'd call me back. You sound like someone who's about to use her quiet voice to do something loud." "I came home to find my life by the trash cans," I said. "They changed the locks." Silence hummed on the other end, then a low whistle. Keir and that wife of his. "Yes. I told you the day of the wedding." Savina looked like she was shopping even when she was smiling. Despite everything, I almost smiled. I think Alden would have called it selective charm. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I found documents. Mortgage title, my name's on everything, but I don't want to look vindictive." Vindictive. Odelia's laugh was sharp enough to cut. "Honey, there's a difference between revenge and record-keeping. You kept the records. Now it's time to use them." I pressed the phone closer to my ear. "I don't want to drag them through court. Then let them drag you into the gutter instead." "No, ma'am. You did the work, you paid the bills. The house is yours by law, not by favor." Her certainty steadied me more than I wanted to admit. "Even if they change the locks, locks are 2 screws and a lie. The deed's the truth. I know someone who can help." I heard her flipping through papers. Odelia never lost her habit of keeping contact sheets in a binder. "Name's Drayton Mott. He used to handle property disputes for the union. Sharp mind, mean coffee breath. He owes me a favor. I don't want to trouble anyone." "You already have trouble," she said plainly. "This man will help you solve it. Write down his number." I scribbled it on the edge of an old envelope. The act itself felt like crossing a line from confusion into motion. When I didn't speak, she softened her tone. "Ferelith, listen to me. You're not getting even. You're getting back what's yours. Alden would have raised hell if you let them take it." I closed my eyes. He would. Then honor him, and book yourself a safe place tonight. "You can't sleep in the car. I was thinking of the budget view near the riverfront. They still rent by the week." "Perfect. The manager, there's decent. She used to come to my pension meetings, Marva Withers. Tell her I sent you. She'll give you a clean room and a discount. Thank you, Odelia." "I'll call Drayton myself in the morning," she said. "He'll be expecting you. Bring every scrap of paper you have, and for God's sake, don't tell Keir where you're staying." Her words landed heavy, but right. "I won't." "Good. And Ferelith, don't you dare feel guilty. Those two threw away a mother, not a maid." Her line went quiet after that, just the faint hum of static, the kind that sounds like breathing when someone cares too much to hang up first. I finally said, "Good night, Odelia," and ended the call. Outside, the street was empty now, but I could still see the outline of the house against the dark sky, my house. I turned the key in the ignition. The engine caught. The folder slid off the seat into my lap like it wanted to come along. By the time I reached the Budget View Motel, the river smelled of rain and salt. I checked in under my own name, room 12, and set the folder on the nightstand. If justice begins with one phone call, what will the next one cost? The room smelled like disinfectant and salt air. The carpet held a faint trace of bleach, and the air conditioner clicked every few seconds like a metronome for sleepless thoughts. I sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing my shoes, the mortgage folder on my lap. I placed Alden's photo on the nightstand. It was the same picture I'd found near the trash. His smile tilted, one eyebrow raised, as if he could see right through my pride. The glass was still cracked, but it caught the lamplight in a way that made the fracture look like lightning. "Don't you start scolding me," I murmured. My voice barely made a sound in the sterile air. I opened the folder again, spreading out the documents across the blanket like a deck of cards. Ownership, insurance, property tax receipts, all in my name. Proof that what they took wasn't theirs to claim. But even with the papers in front of me, I couldn't stop replaying the way Keir had looked away when Savina told me to leave. That quiet surrender hurt worse than the shouting ever could. I reached into the drawer for motel stationery and a dull pencil. The paper was thin, but it would do. At the top, I wrote Monday in large, deliberate letters. Then underneath lawyer, copies. Breathe. The third word surprised me. It wasn't part of the plan, but I left it there. I needed the reminder. The pencil trembled slightly as I pressed it against the paper again. I thought of the nights I'd stayed up balancing their accounts, writing checks, making sure the lights stayed on. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped asking for thanks. Then I stopped expecting it. Then I stopped noticing its absence altogether. I leaned back against the headboard, the motel sheets rough beneath my palms. The television murmured from the room next door. Someone watching the late news, the familiar voices too far away to understand. I let them treat me like a tenant in my own house, I said out loud, testing the truth of it. It fit. It was ugly, but it fit. I remembered the small signs, Savina deciding what to cook in my kitchen, Keir using my bedroom dresser for his work files, the way I'd started knocking before entering rooms I'd once dusted and painted myself. A quiet shrinking inch by inch. And I had allowed it. The hum of the air conditioner filled the pause that followed. I looked over at Alden's photo again. "You were right," I whispered. "Paper outlives gold." But I never thought I'd have to use it against our own son. Outside, I could hear the soft churn of traffic along the riverfront. Somewhere nearby, a ship's horn sounded low and distant. I imagined the people aboard Sailor's Tourists, anyone who got to keep moving forward. I gathered the papers back into the folder, aligning the edges as neatly as Alden would have. My hands steadied with the motion. Tomorrow, I'd meet Odelia's lawyer. Tomorrow, I'd make copies, print receipts, sign forms. Tonight, all I could do was breathe the word echoing back from the list on the nightstand. I turned off the lamp. The crack across Alden's photo caught the last streak of light, a thin gold line cutting through the dark. How do you rebuild respect when the people you love most took it first? The law office was tucked above a coffee shop downtown, the kind of place where everything smelled faintly of roasted beans and old carpet. Drayton Mott looked younger than I expected. Mid-40s, clean-shaven sleeves rolled to his elbows. His handshake was firm but not theatrical, the kind of grip that said he spent more time reading than talking. "Mrs. Daws," he said, motioning me toward a chair. "Odelia told me you're thorough. Let's see what we're working with." I slid the folder across his desk. "Everything's here. Mortgage papers, insurance, taxes. My name's on all of it." He opened the folder and began sorting through the contents, his fingers moving fast, practiced. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the faint squeak of his pen as he took notes. After a while, he said, "You've kept these in good condition. That helps." I kept them because my husband said to. He passed 8 years ago. He nodded once, not with sympathy, but respect. He was a smart man. Let's start with this, your title deed. He tapped one page near the bottom. See here. Primary owner Ferelith Daws. That's you and only you. I thought so, I said, though my voice wavered. He continued. Your son and his wife. Keir and Savina Correct have no legal ownership. They've been living there at your permission, nothing more. Changing the locks doesn't change that. You're still the legal occupant and the rightful owner. The words hit like a door unlocking somewhere inside me. So, they can't just throw me out. They can't, he said simply, but you can remove them. I blinked. Remove them. He folded his hands. Legally, yes. You'll start with a notice to vacate. It gives them 7 days to leave voluntarily. If they refuse, we file for unlawful detainer. The court will issue an order returning possession of the property to you. I gripped the arm of the chair. You make it sound easy. It isn't, he said, studying me. It's clean on paper, but it'll get messy in real life. They'll try to argue it's their home. Maybe they'll cry in court. Maybe they'll stall. But facts are stronger than feelings. I gave a small, unsteady laugh. You've never been a mother, have you? 2 kids, he said. Both still think I'm a villain every time I say no. The difference is, I'm fine with it. His honesty disarmed me. I'm not fine with it. But I'm tired of being erased in my own life. That's where the law helps, he said, sliding a blank form toward me. You fill this out sign here and here. I'll file it with the clerk this afternoon. My hand hovered over the line. What happens after they get the notice? They'll panic first, he said without hesitation. Then they'll call you, maybe apologize, maybe threaten. Don't answer. Let me handle every communication. Once it's filed, the process belongs to the court, not the kitchen table. I looked down at my name printed neatly above the signature line. It felt strange, like reclaiming something I'd lost piece by piece. I signed, slowly pressing the pen hard enough to leave an imprint on the next page. When I looked up, Drayton was watching me. You okay? Yes, I said, surprised to hear that I meant it. I think I am. He gathered the papers, stacked them precisely, and placed a business card on top. I'll call when it's filed. If they contact you, keep a record of everything they say. Every message, every word. You've spent your life keeping receipts, Mrs. Daws. Keep these too. I nodded, tucking the card into my purse beside Alden's photo. As I left, the air outside smelled of rain beginning somewhere upriver. The courthouse clock struck noon sharp and deliberate, echoing through the street. What happens when a mother stops protecting and starts enforcing? The post office smelled like paper and old air. I stood at the counter, holding a thick envelope addressed to my own house, the irony of it stinging sharper than the air conditioning. The clerk glanced at the return address, then at me. You want this certified? She asked. Yes, I said. Signature required. Her nails clicked against the scale as she weighed it. Looks official. It is. When I slid my signature across her clipboard, my hand barely trembled. She stamped the envelope loud and final and handed me the receipt. I tucked it carefully into the folder Drayton had given me, Case File Daws versus Occupants. Outside, the sun hit hard, reflecting off the hoods of parked cars. I walked to mine, set the envelope in the passenger seat, and pulled out my phone. The house sat only 6 blocks away, but I wasn't going there. Not yet. Instead, I drove slowly past it, windows up, engine quiet. The trash pile was gone. In its place, a damp rectangle of grass marked where my life had been. Savina's car sat in the driveway, spotless, curtains drawn. Same house, same paint, but it looked smaller, like it had shrunk to fit the lies. I parked half a block away, angled my camera toward the curb, and started taking photos, the broken driveway edge, the damp outline, the street number in clear view. Every image a small anchor of truth. Odelia's voice echoed in my head. Receipts, not regrets. Back in the car, I texted the photos to Drayton. Within minutes, my phone buzzed. Drayton, got them. Good clarity. Keep your distance now. Me. Should I call if they reach out, Drayton? Don't answer. I'll handle everything. We'll keep it clean. No police until needed. No police until needed. The phrase sat heavy. Clean, he'd said. But there was nothing clean about watching your son's home become a case file. I drove back to the motel, the certified receipt still in my hand. The clerk at the front desk gave me a small nod as I passed, polite but curious. People could always sense when something inside you had shifted. In my room, I spread the folder across the table and placed the receipt on top. It looked harmless thin white, printed in blue ink, but it meant power had changed hands. A call came through from Odelia. Drayton told me he filed the notice, she said. You holding up, I mailed my copy, I said. It's official now. She let out a satisfied hum. You did right, Ferelith. Don't backpedal when they start begging. That guilt of yours is a luxury you can't afford. I stared at the photo of Alden on the nightstand. I don't feel angry, I said. I thought I would. Anger's loud, Odelia said. Justice is quiet. Let it stay that way. When the call ended, I sat still for a long time, listening to the hum of the air conditioner and the distant clatter of a delivery truck outside. My chest felt lighter, but not freer, more like the pause between breaths when something fragile steadies itself before breaking. On the motel desk, my list from that first night, weighted edges curling from the damp air. I added a fourth line beneath breathe, don't flinch. I capped the pen, exhaled slowly, and turned off the lamp. The blue postal receipt glowed faintly in the dark, like a promise waiting to be kept. When the law is finally on your side. Can your heart keep up? Marceline. Quaid looked too young to carry a briefcase that serious. She wore dark slacks, a white blouse, and a focus sharp enough to slice through pretense. When she greeted me in her small office on Habersham Street, her handshake was firm, her smile practiced but not hollow. Odelia said you might come by, she said, guiding me to a chair. You've got some property complications, right? Something like that. I placed the folder on her desk, the same one that had lived beside me for days now. The house is mine legally. I just need to know how to handle it without burning the world down. She gave a short, knowing laugh. That's a common goal, though rarely possible. I watched as she flipped through the papers, one hand, steady eyes scanning quickly, but not carelessly. Your documentation is solid, she said after a moment. Mortgage tax title. Your name appears on every page that matters. That's what Drayton said. Then he's right. You're the owner, Mrs. Daws. We'll proceed carefully, but you're standing on solid ground. The word owner caught in my throat. It doesn't feel like it. I haven't set foot inside in a week. You will, she said simply. But first, we play by the book. The notice gives them 7 days correct, yes. It was mailed certified on Monday. Then we wait for that window to close. Once it does, we can start the process of reclaiming possession formally. She tapped the folder with a polished nail. When you're ready, I'll schedule an appraisal and have my photographer take updated listing photos. The house should look like it belongs to you again. Her tone wasn't legal. It was almost personal, and that steadied me. Would that even be possible while they're still there? We'll handle it delicately, she said. My photographer can work around schedules, and if they object, we'll make it clear that you have full rights of entry. Something about her certainty made me sit straighter. You sound like you've done this before. I have, she said. Families, tenants, even business partners, people always assume paperwork is just ink. But it's not. It's structure. It's the bones of fairness. I studied her for a moment. You talk like someone who still believes in that word. I have to, she said. Otherwise, I'd never sleep. The faintest smile tugged at my mouth. Then maybe I'm in the right hands. She reached across the desk, her expression softening. You are. And for what it's worth, I think it's brave fighting for something that's yours without letting bitterness take over. I don't feel brave, I said. I feel like a woman who's been erased. Then let's rewrite the page. That line stayed with me even after I left her office. The air outside felt heavier, humid, with the first hints of summer. I walked 2 blocks before realizing I was smiling, not out of joy, but out of recognition. For the first time in weeks, someone had looked at me and seen a person, not a problem to be managed. That evening back at the motel, I spread the documents across the bed again. Deed appraisal forms, notice receipt, all lined in neat rows. Each paper carried the same quiet promise. You exist. You matter. I took Alden's photo from the nightstand and propped it beside the stack. The crack across his smile looked smaller tonight. When I turned off the light, I caught my reflection in the window. A woman, tired, yes, but upright. The phone buzzed once, with a message from Marceline confirmed with Drayton. Appraisal next Thursday at 10. We'll make this right. I typed back one word. Thank you. The papers rustled as the air conditioner hummed on. For the first time, I didn't flinch at the sound. What's more powerful, the paper that proves ownership or the courage to use it? The landlord barely looked up when I handed him the cash. 1 month lease, he said, sliding a short form across the counter. Furnished. Utilities included. No questions, no drama. That's what I'm paying for, I said. The apartment was small, 1 window, 1 table, 1 bed, but it smelled clean like lemon polish and distance. I set my bag down, signed the lease, and tucked the key into my pocket. From the hallway, his voice carried after me. You need mail service, yes. Forward everything here under my name. I paused. And if anyone calls asking for me, tell them I moved out of state. He nodded without curiosity. Whatever keeps the rent paid. Back in the apartment, I sat at the table with my phone and notebook. The list began again. Tight handwriting. Careful order, mail forwarding complete. New SIM card activate today. Close old number, don't look back. The new number took less than 15 minutes to set up. When the screen blinked, welcome, it felt like a clean page. I dialed Odelia first. Where are you? She asked immediately. Somewhere between patience and peace, I said. I rented a place. Temporary. You sound calm. I am. For now. Drayton said not to engage, and I won't. But they'll notice soon. They will, she said, and the not knowing will eat them alive. Let it. When the call ended, I shut off the phone, slipped the SIM card wrapper into the drawer, and held the device in my hands for a long minute before deleting every saved contact. Kier's name vanished last. By afternoon, I was on the highway, heading east. The city fell away behind me, Savannah's brick storefronts, the quiet spires all shrinking in the mirror until there was only open road and marshland. The wind pressed through the cracked window, salt and pine in its breath. I stopped once at a gas station near Wilmington Island to stretch. A young couple argued at the next pump about beach parking. I envied their small problems. When I reached the causeway toward Tybee, the tide was high, the water glinting pale gold under the late sun. I rolled down the window fully, letting the noise of the sea rush in a steady, grounding roar. If they think I'm gone, I said out loud, let them live with the silence. I checked into a roadside inn with sand-streaked floors and a faded sign that promised, weekly rates available. The clerk handed me a metal key and said, ocean view if you stand on your toes. Perfect. In the room, I unpacked only the essentials. Alden's photo, the folder, a change of clothes. The rest stayed in the car. The ocean was faintly audible through the thin walls, a low reminder that distance could be a kind of armor. That night, I wrote one more line in the notebook. Sometimes the loudest answer is none at all. I placed the notebook under the folder, turned off the lamp, and lay awake watching the glow from the parking lot seep through the curtains. How long before silence starts sounding like? Consequence, the cafe sat just off the boardwalk, its windows fogged from steam and sea air. I chose a corner table, the kind no one looks at twice, and ordered black coffee from a young server who called everyone ma'am, like it was a habit, not respect. The morning light was too bright, the world too calm for what I was about to do. My phone had been off for 3 days. It sat face down on the table beside Alden's photo, the one I carried now in a slim leather sleeve. I traced the edge of the frame once before turning the phone over and holding the power button. The screen lit and the sound began. One alert after another, pings, vibrations, messages stacking faster than I could breathe. 76 missed calls, 43 voicemails, dozens of unread texts. I scrolled slowly, eyes catching the first name Kier, over and over again. Occasionally, Savina, once a number labeled home, which no longer meant anything. The server brought my coffee, glanced at the flood of notifications, and gave a small, sympathetic smile. Rough morning, I managed a polite one back. Just unfinished business. She nodded and left me to it. I opened the voicemails in order, starting with the earliest. Kier's voice sharp and impatient. Mom, what the hell is going on? There's a letter on the door, some legal nonsense with your name on it. You can't just threaten us like that. Call me back. Click. Next. Savina, this time clipped and dismissive. Ferelith, this is childish. You're confused. You're not thinking straight. Take that notice back before this gets ugly. Another click. Then Kier again, tone tighter. I mean it, Mom. This isn't funny. You can't sell the house. You signed papers years ago, didn't you? I smiled faintly. Didn't you? The smallest crack in certainty. By the 10th message, his anger had softened. By the 20th, it had splintered. Mom, please just talk to me. Savina's been crying all night. We didn't know. His breath hitched. I didn't know you'd go this far. I sipped my coffee, steadying my hand before pressing play again. By message 31, the pleading had turned to panic. There are people walking through the house, taking pictures. The realtor says she works for you. Tell me this isn't real. Please call me. I glanced toward the ocean through the window. The water glittered like steel under the noon sun. Message 42. Savina's voice hoarse and frantic. You can't sell it, Ferelith. We don't have anywhere to go. You wouldn't do that to your own son. Not after everything we've... A sharp inhale. We'll pay rent. We'll make it right. Please, the next one was short. Kier again, his voice small. Mom, I'm sorry for the things she said, for not stopping her. I didn't mean for it to end like this. I let that one play out fully before pressing delete. When the list reached its end, I set the phone flat on the table screen, still glowing. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. It felt quieter than both. A new text arrived just as I was about to shut the phone off again. From Marceline. Offers are coming fast. 10 in 48 hours. Several above asking. Buyers want to move quickly. Call when ready. I stared at her message a long time before typing a single reply. Proceed. The ocean wind pushed through the door when someone left, carrying a hint of salt and wet sand. It brushed my face like something closing gently, not ending, but sealing. The server returned with the check. You want a refill? No, thank you, I said. I think I've had enough for one morning. She smiled kindly, unaware of the storm she was walking through. Whatever it was, you look like it's over. Not over, I said, standing, slipping Alden's photo back into my bag, just balanced. Outside, gulls wheeled above the shore, loud and careless. I walked toward the sound, the phone heavy in my pocket, no longer buzzing. The tide had started to rise, the horizon blurring into light. When they finally want to talk, do you answer or let the silence teach? The courthouse smelled like toner and impatience. I sat outside Drayton's office, watching a woman at the counter argue about parking tickets, her voice rising like steam. My turn came quietly. Drayton stepped out, a thin folder in hand. "It's time," he said. Inside his office, the air felt dense, packed with the weight of process. He slid the form across the desk. "Unlawful detainer. It's the next step, since they haven't vacated." "They received the notice a week ago," I said. "I saw the delivery confirmation." "They signed for it," he confirmed, and ignored it. "So we proceed. You're well within your rights." My fingers brushed the pen, but I hesitated. I never wanted it to come to this. He looked at me evenly. "I know, but they forced the timeline, not you." The pen touched paper. My name appeared again, steady ink, dark and deliberate. It didn't feel like vengeance this time. It felt like maintenance, the quiet act of keeping things upright. Drayton gathered the papers and checked the date. "The sheriff's office will post notice within 48 hours. Once it's up, they'll have 3 days to leave voluntarily. After that, the court issues the order." "Will they make a scene?" He smiled faintly. "They might. But the sheriff handles that part. You don't need to be there." That night I stayed in my Tybee motel room, the sound of the ocean just loud enough to drown the thoughts that wouldn't rest. I didn't call Odelia. I didn't check social media. The folder lay beside the lamp, marked with a new tab filed. By morning, it was done. Drayton called at 9. "Deputy Claiborne just posted the notice on your front door. Certified copies been sent to me. Did they react?" "Not at first," he said. "Then Savina came outside filming. She shouted something about elder abuse turned backward, financial manipulation by the parent, I think she called it." I expected that. I sank into the chair by the window. "And I already sent the counterfile," he said. "Your bank records, payment history, and the signed affidavits from your accountant. If she tries to post anything online, the documentation speaks louder. I also requested a cease and desist through her hosting platform in case she uploads it." "Does that actually work?" "It works enough," he said dryly. "Most people crumble when they realize facts have timestamps." A strange sound left my throat, a laugh that wasn't quite one. "Paper over pity," I murmured. "Exactly," Drayton said. "Pity fades. Paper stays." I thanked him and hung up. Later, I scrolled through my old Facebook account, the one I'd left dormant. Savina's profile popped up almost immediately. A single post read, "When your own family turns on you for money, remember, truth always wins." No names, no tags, but clear enough for anyone who knew us. Comments trickled in sympathy from her friends, confusion from mine. I hovered over the keyboard, ready to defend myself, to lay out every receipt, every proof. Then I stopped. I thought of Alden's advice, never argue with noise, just turn up the light. I closed the laptop and unplugged it. The ocean roared faintly beyond the walls, constant and impartial. By sunset, Drayton texted again, press ignoring her. "Keep quiet. We're on schedule." I sent back, "Understood." No more explanations. No more begging to be believed. Only paper, not pity. The next morning, the sheriff's office confirmed the posting was still in place, undisturbed, untouched. For once, silence felt like progress. "What's louder, accusation or proof?" Drayton called me early Monday morning. His voice was calm, the kind people use when the battle is nearly over, but not yet clean. "They're willing to talk," he said. "Keir and Savina have been avoiding the deputy, but they called me last night. I think they finally understand you're not bluffing." I sat on the edge of the motel bed, watching sunlight climb across the carpet. "What are they asking for?" "Time," he said. "And maybe a little money." I almost laughed. "After throwing my life into the trash, I know," he said. "But if we want this to end quietly, there's an option. Cash for keys. You pay a small amount, they leave without damage or delay. You regain possession faster, save court fees, avoid confrontation. $2,000, 7 days. They hand over the keys and sign a release. It's not fairness, it's efficiency. I let the number hang between us. $2,000 wasn't mercy. It was the price of silence. Would you take it? I asked. In your position. Yes. It's not surrender, Ferelith. It's transaction. When I didn't respond, he added, It ends this week. You get your house back. No police, no shouting. All right, I said. Set it up. We met at his office that afternoon. Keir was already there, sitting stiffly beside Savina. She looked smaller than I remembered, her hair pulled tight, her eyes swollen from crying or lack of sleep. Keir didn't look at me at all. Drayton laid the papers out between us. This agreement states Mrs. Daws will pay the sum of $2,000 in exchange for immediate and complete vacancy of the property within 7 days. Both parties sign keys or returned no further claims. Savina's voice broke the quiet first. $2,000 isn't much for what we've put into that place. I met her eyes. You mean my place? She blinked, color rising in her cheeks. We made it livable. I turned to Drayton. Show her the receipts. He opened the folder and slid a sheet across the table. All major repairs, roofing, plumbing, pest control paid by Mrs. Daws. Total expenditures exceeding $42,000 over 15 years. Savina stared at the paper, lips pressed tight. Keir rubbed the back of his neck. We just need a chance to start somewhere else, he muttered. You'll have it, I said evenly. 7 days. Drayton pushed the pen toward me. Sign here. The pen felt heavier than it should have. My signature curved slowly, deliberate, the ink steady. I didn't feel anger or triumph, only the quiet math of closing an account. Savina signed next, quick strokes, eyes fixed on the paper. Keir hesitated. Mom, he said softly, still not meeting my gaze. You really don't have to do this. Yes, I do. He nodded, swallowed, and signed. Drayton gathered the papers, tapped them into alignment. Done. I'll deliver your payment and supervise the handover. You'll have possession by next Monday. Savina stood clutching her purse. You'll regret this, she said, but it came out thin, uncertain. No, I said. I already did my regretting. This is just the end of the equation. They left first. Keir didn't look back. The sound of the door closing was softer than I expected. Drayton handed me a copy of the agreement. You handled that with more grace than most people could manage. It isn't grace, I said. It's arithmetic. They took years. I'm buying back peace. He nodded once. Sometimes that's the best rate you'll ever get. When I stepped outside, the air felt cooler, clearer. The courthouse bell struck 3 times in the distance. The deal was done. The house would be mine again. Is closure worth more when you pay for it, or when you stop paying forever? The conference room smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink. Sunlight slanted across the long oak table, where a stack of documents waited for me. Marceline sat at my side, composed as ever, her pen poised like a conductor's baton. Across from us, the young couple, Theophile and Rihanna Lark, looked nervous, their fingers entwined under the table. This will finalize the transfer, Marceline said softly. $400,000 full payment verified. Once you sign, it's done. Theophile smiled shyly. We've admired your house since the first open viewing. We can't believe it's really ours. I nodded, folding my hands together. Take good care of it. It's been through enough. Rihanna leaned forward, her tone gentle. We will, Mrs. Daws. We're starting our family there. It feels like a place meant for beginnings. Marceline passed me the final page. Sign here and here, she said, tapping the lines in blue ink. Drayton already reviewed everything. You'll receive the funds this afternoon. I took the pen. The paper was cool beneath my fingers, the type crisp, detached. My name looked steady when I wrote it. It's only wood and walls, I said quietly. Respect is harder to rebuild. Marceline gave a small nod, the kind that carried understanding without pity. You've rebuilt plenty already. Theophile glanced between us, unsure if he should speak. We heard it used to be your family's home, he said carefully. It was, I replied. Then it wasn't. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was honest. I slid the pen back to Marceline, who gathered the papers and aligned their edges with care. Rihanna stood and reached across the table. "Thank you for trusting us," she said. Her hand was warm, her grip earnest. "We'll make it a good home again." I believed her. "That's all any house ever needs," I said. Marceline checked her watch. "Funds will clear by 4 o'clock. Once the transfer posts, we'll close out your account and send confirmation." "Good," I said. "Then that's everything." She smiled faintly. "Not quite. You've still got a porch light that needs turning off." I laughed under my breath. "You remember everything, don't you?" "It's my job," she said, "and my habit." When we stepped outside, the spring air hit warm and clean. The azaleas along the courthouse steps had bloomed overnight, sharp pink, against the brick. Marceline paused by her car. "You'll call when you're ready for your next move." "I might not," I said. "For the first time, I don't have to plan around anyone else." She smiled, a real one this time. "That sounds like freedom." "Maybe it is." I walked to my car and sat behind the wheel for a moment before turning the key. Through the windshield, I could see the courthouse clock hands ticking toward noon. I thought about the years spent inside that house, birthdays, repairs, arguments, silence, and how none of it existed on paper anymore. When I drove past it one last time, the sold sign gleamed bright in the yard. A moving truck waited at the curb. Thea, Phil, and Rihanna were already there, carrying boxes together, their laughter drifting faintly through the open door. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. The road ahead shimmered in the light wide and waiting. When you've sold the place that betrayed you, what do you build next? The day after the closing, I stopped at the grocery store near my new apartment. A simple errand, milk, bread, coffee, but it felt like a ceremony. I had walked out of that title office, clean name intact. Future untethered. I was halfway across the parking lot with my bag when I saw them. Kier's car. The same dent on the bumper, the same stubborn way he parked at an angle. Savina stood beside him, arms folded, eyes red-rimmed. For a moment, I thought they were strangers. Then she called my name. Ferelith. The sound of it turned heads. I stopped but didn't move closer. Kier got out slowly. Shoulders slumped, that old nervous habit of rubbing his hands together. "Mom," he said, voice thin. "We just need to talk." I kept my tone even. "You're 2 weeks late for that." Savina took a hesitant step forward. "We were wrong," she said. "About everything. We didn't mean for it to go this far. You meant for it to go far enough," I said. "You changed the locks. You threw my life onto the street. That takes planning, not impulse." She flinched. "We panicked. We thought that I'd sign it over. I finished for her." Kier's jaw tightened. "We just wanted to build something of our own. You made it impossible to feel independent." I let the bag of groceries rest against my leg. "You wanted independence. You have it now." He looked at the asphalt. "Not me. Please stop the sale. We'll find a way to pay you back. We'll move somewhere smaller if we have to." "The sale closed yesterday," I said quietly. "It's done." Savina's eyes filled her mascara, bleeding into thin shadows. "You can't do this to family." I met her gaze. "Family isn't a word you get to use when it's convenient." She covered her face with both hands. "We were angry." "You were always present," I said. "That's the word you're avoiding." "I was always there. That was the problem, wasn't it? Having someone who remembered what you owed." Kier stepped forward, voice cracking. "Mom, please, we're sorry." I looked at him, then really looked the same boy who used to bring me daisies from the yard, the same man who'd stood silent while his wife called me useless. His face was drawn older, something hollow sitting behind the eyes. "You told me I wasn't needed," I said softly. "You were right, because now I don't need you." He blinked as if I'd struck him. "You don't mean that." "I mean every word I said. But it doesn't come from hate. It comes from having nothing left to trade. Savina lowered her hands. We've been sleeping at a friend's place. It's not permanent. We just need time. Time is the one thing you can't borrow from me anymore. The silence that followed was thick like air before a storm. Cars passed behind us, doors slammed. A cart squeaked across the lot. Life continued indifferent. Kier's voice fell to a whisper. Mom, please. Can we at least see you talk sometime? I wanted to say yes. The word hovered in my throat, aching to escape. But I saw Alden's photo in my mind, the crack through his smile, the proof of what breaking trust looks like. I took a breath. Not now, I said. Not until you understand what sorry means when there's nothing left to fix. Savina wiped her face, her voice small. Then I guess this is goodbye. For now, I said. Goodbye doesn't have to mean forever. But it does mean not today. I turned and walked toward my building. The grocery bag swung lightly at my side. Behind me, I heard Kier call once more, my name stretched thin by the wind. I didn't turn around. At the door, I paused, looking out across the parking lot. They were still standing there, two figures caught between guilt and distance. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and let it close quietly behind me. Can forgiveness exist without re-entry? The condo sat on the edge of Lake Chapman, small but bright, its walls the color of early morning. I bought it with part of the sale money, enough left over for comfort, not luxury. Athens was quieter than Savannah, a college town with bookstores and magnolia trees that didn't seem to mind newcomers. The first week I lived among boxes again. Only this time they were my choice. I unpacked slowly, each item finding its place. The first thing I hung was Alden's old measuring square, polished and worn smooth, where his fingers had gripped it. I mounted it above the small workbench by the window. When the neighbor from next door stopped by, a woman in her 70s named Celia Brandt, she knocked twice and let herself in before I could answer. I saw the U-Haul, she said, handing me a loaf of bread wrapped in foil. No one moves in without bread. It's the rule here. Then I'm already behind, I said, smiling. Celia looked around the half-settled room. You do your own repairs, I'm learning, I said. Used to help my husband with small projects. Now I fix furniture for charity. Nothing fancy. Just sanding, painting, making things useful again. She nodded approvingly. There's a community center 2 miles down the road. They'll fight each other for someone who can work a sander without losing a finger. That afternoon, she drove me there herself. The center was a squat red brick building beside a baseball field, half classroom, half refuge. Inside, a mix of retirees, students, and single parents worked on donated pieces, chairs, tables, even cribs. The air smelled of sawdust and turpentine. The director, a man named Leon, shook my hand. We don't pay in money, he said. We pay in company and coffee. You in? I think I've already been paid enough in silence, I said. Company sounds better. From that day, I came every Tuesday and Thursday, rolling up my sleeves alongside them. I sanded uneven tabletops, mended chair legs, and learned how to stain without streaking. The work left my palms raw, but my mind clear. One morning, Leon stopped by my bench as I polished a small oak dresser. You've got patience, he said. Most folks rush to make something look new. You let it remember it's old. I know what that feels like, I said. Celia joined us carrying a cup of coffee. She's being modest. Half the donated pieces are already gone to good homes because of her. I smiled, shaking my head. I just mend what's given to me. At home, the measuring square became my talisman. Each time I built or repaired something, I set it on the bench beside me, its metal edge catching light like quiet approval. Alden had used it to measure porch beams, cabinet doors, even the height of Kier's first growth chart. Now it measured my steadiness. By early spring, my apartment smelled of wood oil and lemon soap. A few of the neighbors started dropping by to help Celia painted edges. Leon brought supplies. Even the college kids next door carried pieces in from thrift stores. We called it the Lake House Workshop, though it was really just a spare bedroom lined with tools and music from an old radio. One evening, Celia came by as I was finishing a chair, the last coat of varnish drying smooth. "You ever think of selling them?" she asked. "No," I said. "I like giving them away. Feels like putting something useful back into the world." She leaned against the doorframe. "You don't miss the old life." I looked at the square on the wall, its edges dulled by time. "I miss the people they used to be, but not the version they left me with." Celia nodded quiet for a moment. "You built something here, you know. Not just furniture." "I think that's the point," I said. "I'm finally building without waiting for permission." The sun dipped over the lake light, glinting through the blinds. I turned off the lamp and sat for a moment, letting the smell of varnish and evening air fill the room. The square above the desk gleamed faintly steady, unchanged. When I closed the door, I didn't lock it. The place felt safe on its own. When you stop being someone's safety net, can you finally become your own? 6 months passed before the letter came. It was folded neatly, the envelope hand-addressed in Kier's familiar, uneven scrawl. No return address, just my name, written with a hesitation I could almost hear. I sat at my kitchen table in the Lake House condo, the morning sun warming the edge of the page. For a long time, I didn't open it. Then I did. "Mom, I've been thinking about everything. About the house, the way it ended, and what I said or didn't say. I don't know how to fix it, but I want to try. If you're willing to talk, I'll drive wherever you say. Kier." The handwriting wavered halfway through, as if he'd stopped to think too long. I read it twice, folded it back along its crease, and placed it beside my coffee cup. When I called Odelia later that morning, she listened quietly, then said, "You don't owe him a scene, Ferelith, but maybe a sentence." "I'm not angry anymore," I said. "Just settled." Then answer in that tone. Settled is stronger than angry. That afternoon, I wrote him back 3 lines, no emotion wasted, Kier lunch on Thursday, 1 o'clock. Café Merit, downtown Athens. Mom, no lecture, no forgiveness, just space for words if he had any left. The cafe was quiet, the kind of place where conversation stayed low and the coffee always smelled fresh. When I arrived, he was already there, thinner, older, in ways that had nothing to do with time. He stood as I approached, hands in his pockets. "Hi, Mom," he said. "Hi, Kier." We sat. Neither of us touched the menus. He started first. "I didn't come to ask for the house back. I know I said. I came because I couldn't keep pretending it didn't happen. What we did. What I let her do." His voice cracked slightly, and I saw the boy. He'd been the one who used to fix the garden hose with too much tape, proud of a crooked solution. "Savina's gone," he said after a pause. "She left 2 months ago. Said she couldn't handle the shame." I stirred my coffee slowly. People handle what they cause differently. Some fix, some flee. "I wanted to call sooner," he said. "But I didn't know if you'd answer." "I might not have," I admitted. He nodded, accepting it. "You look good," he said. "Happier." "I am," I said simply. "I'm working with a community group fixing old furniture, giving it away. Feels like starting over without losing what matters." He smiled faintly. "That sounds like you." "I learned it from someone," I said. "You just forgot who she was for a while." He swallowed hard. "I did." For a long moment, the only sound between us was the soft clink of cups. He didn't ask for forgiveness, and I didn't offer it. We met in the middle, no demands, no performances. Just 2 people choosing a quieter truth. When the check came, he reached for it. "Let me," he said. I let him. It was the smallest kind of repair, but real. Outside, the afternoon was bright. He walked me to my car. "Can we do this again?" he asked. Maybe I said, "When it feels natural." He nodded, and I saw understanding, not disappointment. "I'll wait for that." We stood there for another moment, the distance between us not heavy anymore, just measured, manageable. Goodbye, Kier, I said. Goodbye, Mom. He turned first, walking back toward the cafe. I watched until the door closed behind him. Then I drove home. That evening, I sat at my workbench, the lake light spilling across my papers, the ledger I'd kept for years. Debts and Gifts lay open, its pages filled with careful lines and notes. Money lent time, lost trust, misplaced. I ran my fingers across the final entry, then closed it gently. From the drawer, I pulled a new notebook, its cover clean, untouched. I uncapped my pen and wrote the first line across the top of the page. Respect. Once earned compounds faster than money. And this time, every entry is in my name. I placed the ledger on the shelf beside Alden's measuring square and left the new book open on the desk. The window caught a sliver of moonlight, soft and unwavering. For the first time in years, I didn't feel owed or emptied, just balanced.